Alright, hello me, you're probably studying, and here's Augustus, you lazy fuck. Alright, so, study of Augustus, let's fucking go. Augustus, Principate, Nepo baby. Sources. The young man should be praised and honoured. Cicero, my shit talker. Aris Passis, a bunch of propaganda in some little in carvings of his family being like gods and shit or something. Prima Porta, where he's depicted as like a Roman orator, very high position of power, if you ask me. Fucking hell, what is the hair doing today? Jesus. I found clay and I left it. I found fuck. I found Rome of clay and I leave it to you, marble, or some shit like that. Augustus, in his own words, uh, on the defeated, who shall bring again an age of gold? Virgil, Virgil, Virgil. Augustus allowed his subjects to rest from civil war and gave them quiet, prosperity, and a monarchy of most mild form. Cassius Dio, my main guy. Cicero talked to the Senate. Macari, Fresco, 1888. Done. Right, basic knowledge. He was the first Roman emperor in 27 BC. 27 BC, let's go. Ruler with absolute power and authority, Principate. Mirage of distributed power, because he would say like, oh yeah, you blokes in the Senate, you got power, you blokes in the army got power, but really when it all came down to it, he was the main guy in charge, and he is one who is in charge of all the decisions. Adopted son and heir of Julius Caesar, he's actually his great uncle. His real name is Gaius Octavian Augustus, or Gaius Julius Caesar Octavian Augustus. Too many names. Like in Russian literature, just stick to one, please. I'm begging you. Fucking hell. Alright. A government. Oh yeah. Here's some context. Rome years ago overthrew kings and royals, didn't like that they were in charge. He made a government meant to serve the people and not privilege the few ruling families. Winner of a civil war, commander of troops, army liked him and supported him because they've been battles with him and shit. Restore law and order to Rome, Pax Romana. Romana, Doctor Who. Inherited a world of civil war, left peace. Although that's debatable because you did go kill up your old mate and do a little few wars, but who am I to say, really? Made laws subordinate to him. Okay then. Backstory. Julius Caesar took a liking to him when he was a young boy through personal achievements and proudness of his legacy. There's a story about when he was 11 and his grandma was having a funeral. So, because she was dead, so there was a funeral for her. So then he gave a speech about the great Julio-Claudian dynasty, and that really impressed Julius Caesar, and he's like, that's my great nephew. Fucking family, so confusing. It's just a circle, your family tree. Anyway, early friendship with Agrippa. And Agrippa went on to marry one of Augustus's daughters, which was a bit weird because it's like marrying your dad's best mate. Don't know how they'd feel about that, but anyway, Agrippa, young friends to army buddies to allies, because ally. Basically, Augustus was a little bit sickly, so when they were at war, while Augustus was chopping in a tent, Agrippa would basically be leading the parades and going being the boss of the war, really, and Augustus was kind of doing fuck all, not gonna lie. At 16, Julius Caesar elected to College of Pontiffs, priests, so basically he gave him that. And then at 17, he gave him the title of Magistrate Equitum, Magister Equitum, Master of Horses. I wrote down Master of Sources because, come on now. We all know I am. No, I know fuck all. Completed education and military training. Alright, second triumvirate. Now, this is where it gets a little bit juicy. Alright, so I don't fucking remember the names of the wives, but I'll try. Basically, at the Battle of Mutina, there was like a big blowout, and basically Augustus was fighting Hirsch's Panzer and Brutus because like they were trying to attack like this city with like a circle. Don't ask me. But then Hirsch's and Panzer they die in battle, and Brutus kills himself because well, that just seems to be the answer in all of Roman time, really. Just off yourself, you know what I'm saying? Then he made peace with Mark Antony and he got Lepidus to join up, and then that formed the Second Triumvirate. Oh, fuck me. I have to add like a consulship note. Jesus, that is like early shit. Jesus. Excuse me. Alright. Yeah, so the Second Triumvirate, a combined allyship of Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Augustus, dividing the Roman world into equal distribution. Mark Antony had Egypt, Augustus had Rome and Africa, and Lepidus had Spain and Gaul. The absolute gall of him, Lepidus had Gaul and Spain. This lasted 5 years because, well, the shit that I'm about to go into. A lot of backstabbing, a lot of, fucking around and finding out, which didn't really pan out pretty good. A lot of, Mark Antony being a bit of a slut. And it's, yeah, Cleopatra who's the one who's, a seductress and a slut. No, not Mark Antony. Pff, why would it be? Fucking hell. Alright, the Second Triumvirate aimed to set state in order to an attack on Republic armies of Brutus and Cassius, achieved through prescriptions. Prescriptions. Okay, so basically, when they formed the Second Triumvirate, Lepidus, Mark Antony, and Augustus created this list of people who were like, oh, I don't know if they're gonna fuck with our reign. You know what I'm saying? So basically, they basically they set up this little list of all people that would fuck with them, and then they posted it up, and they were like, yo, anyone who kills them, good on you, you'll get money or something, I don't know. And basically a lot of people on the list would dip, they would run away, but then they would also get chased down and die, because yeah, they really wanted their money, I guess. Yeah. So then that led to a lot of killing, about 2,000 people or something. Doesn't really matter about the number, let's be honest. No one really gives a shit. We all know that we're kind of fail this. It's okay. Yeah, so there was a lot of killing, and then Rome was in a little bit of a state. Everyone was a little bit scared about being offed. And then Augustus was like, yo, guys, my dudes and dudettes, my ancient buddies, let me give you Pax Romana, which means Roman peace, which I'll get to. I'll get to it. Okay, and basically, the fall of the Second Triumvirate was down to a few issues, mainly Mark Antony being a slut. Separate political ideologies, argues over land rights, power, and cheating. Okay, so basically Mark Antony was with Augustus's sister Octavia, and they had a bunch of kids, right? And then he went off and he fucked Cleopatra and then had kids with her, and he wasn't really paying child support and he was being a dickhead and shit. And then and I think he was I think Mark Antony also had a previous marriage with Fulvia or someone, and they already had kids. So Octavia, Augustus's sister, was just being like a free nanny for like 8 or so children or something. And Augustus wasn't having it. He's like, you can't just do that to my sister, mate. That's my sister. Or fuck. So yeah. So then basically this leads to the Battle of Actium, because Augustus is rightfully pissed. Also, he was suspecting that like Cleo's relationship with Mark Antony was not going to be good for his empire, because God forbid, two Bonnie and Clyde little duo serves cunt. Like honestly, fuck if I know. But basically, Mark Antony steals Cleo's shit. Clyde would never. Her money, and takes her army to have a little punch on with Augustus, basically. Um, and then civil war breaks out, which is something that Augustus promised wouldn't happen in Pax Romana, which means peace, which means no blood will be spilled against like another Roman. Like, nah. And then, he saw the relationship of Mark Antony and Cleo as a threat, and, the territory that they had as a threat. So basically, then what also happened was, well, obviously, Augustus won, because King, uh, Nepo baby, but basically, Mark Antony and Cleo offed themselves with some snakes or some shit, and actually, Cleo didn't do it right after him. They didn't go out together. She waited a little bit because she was going over options, because she's smart, contrary to what Augustus would say and the ancient sources. You fucking sexist pricks. But yeah, no. So she waited a little bit, and then she's like, okay, I really don't have much option. I guess I'm gonna have to like go out, lights out. Um, but yeah, Lepidus was sidelined and stripped of power. I mean, he wasn't really doing anything much. He was just kind of, going down the local tavern, just watching a few gladiator fights. Nothing much, really. Um, and then, because Augustus, offed Mark Antony, well, like, indirectly, but, that kind of, was the final hurdle of competing power, and he got rid of all his ops, Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck it. I have power, you prick. That got rid of all of his ops, crushed, leaving Augustus the sole ruler of Rome. And Pax Romana, because you guys might be a little bit confused because I've been talking about it. Pax Romana means Roman peace. Romans were aware of him having power but didn't really give a fuck, as Romans was, Rome was chilling, like, it was all peace and shit. 200-year period, the Golden Age, increased to sustained Rome imperialism, relative peace, besides the occasional murder and battle. You know, order, prosperity, power, region expansion. Pax Romana promised no civil conflict and wars, not allowing Romans to fight other Romans. See, the way that Augustus got round that and like explained the little mishap that happened between him and Mark Antony and Cleo, was basically that like he would spin this propaganda story that, you know, um excuse me, basically he would spin this propaganda story that Mark Antony had been seduced by um, Cleo, and basically that he was going against Rome, and therefore he was a non-Roman. Therefore, Augustus could rightfully kill him because he wasn't, Roman anymore, because he turned his back on like, the tribe and shit. So he was like, fuck yeah. You guys, like, no, it's fine. Like, I can kill him because he's not one of us anymore. Like, you get it? Yeah. Hope I get it. Get it. How did Augustus carry favour with Rome? How did he? Pax Romana, obviously. He gave people land out of his own pocket. He carried out Julius Caesar's legacy. A lot of family lineage, nepo babyism, some Northwest shit was thrown in there. He did some statues of him being like a mad cunt, a bit of propaganda in it. He held games that Julius Caesar used to hold. And he did some reforms, which brings me on to the reforms. Love a bit of reforming, don't you? These reforms were political, social, legal, religious, and admin. So number one, prescriptions. We're not about this. Money, purge, no ops is what I've written down. It's also like if you're doing modern history as well, as you are obviously. It's also like, you know, the Night of the Long Knives, where Hitler was like killing all the people that were his ops because he's like, I don't want them to interfere with like my reign, you know. And it's also something that, you know, Trump will probably do soon. Allegedly. What the fuck am I saying allegedly for? I'm sitting here in Australia in my bedroom. Fucking FBI. Come at me, Mulder. Come at me. Anyway. Number two on Augustus reforms. Standardization. So basically, what would happen is, Augustus would make sure that like a kilo equal another kilo, so that a kilo was like the same amount, like the same measurement as it was in like another part of Rome. And then number three, legal reforms. He introduced some new laws and some more effective admin choices. Some of these are choices. Penalties for unmarried children and women, known as fucking give me a minute. Lex Julia de Maritan Disordinibus. So basically, women who, like, you know, weren't married and didn't have kids by like a certain age or something, he'd go like give them a few punishments, which is kind of like something that Hitler did, where he'd give them a medal if they had like 4 more blonde little shits running around, you know, shit like that. Yeah. Another one he did was number of slaves that could be freed at once. I mean, fuck, what does Ben-Hur got to do? Like, what does Ben-Hur got to do? Raise qualifications required for senators. I quite like that one. Reduce size and killed off unfaithful senators. I don't like that one so much, but some of them were pricks, so you never know. He introduced taxation, efficiency, poll and land tax, because, you know, eat the rich. That's 10, that's 11. Postal system. Augustus was playing Postman Pat. Cursus Publicus. Harry Potter. Try and memorize it like that. Basically, it was like this little sick cart where basically, like, Augustus could, like, it was this cart which carried, like, important official documents. It was a sexism with a box, and, like, express delivery was basically a bloke on a horse. Like, you know, if you really needed that concubine quick or something. Another one was promoted traditional Roman values. Laws aimed to revitalize traditional Roman religious and moral values. We went over the childbearing one. Number 6, patronage of arts and culture. Oh, he's not all boring, I guess. Commissioned works glorifying Rome, his reign. Commissioned works glorifying Rome and his reign. Okay, so it was just more propaganda, wasn't it? Arispaxis or something. Arispaces, whatever the fuck. Restoration of temples. Infrastructure. Number 7, infrastructure development. My bloke was making roads. My bloke was making aqueducts. My bloke was making public buildings. He was all on top of that. Pontifex Maximus. Basically, he was like the chief priest of all of Rome, and that like gave him a lot of religious influence. Here's a source. I have very few because it's like you can't remember it. I think I'm just gonna try and focus on like content really. Um, Authority to the courts, magistrates restored to its old form. Velius. I don't know who the fuck that is. Here's just some random bullshit, I guess. Oh no, it's after the army. Army and troops. He was well liked and held power and influence. Agrippa, his right hand man. Roman legions had pensions. He had a standing army. Divided provinces, senatorial, imperial, and strategic. Praetorian guard, elite personal bodyguards for him. Had army to maintain peace. Yeah, that's what Hitler says, doesn't he? Battle of Mutina. Hirtius and Panzers. We've fucking been over that. He had random thing. He had consulship at a very young age, but luckily, 2 consuls had gone to war with him. And then next he had like a brilliant great granddaughter or some shit, because that family tree is once again a circle, called Agrippina the Younger, who we'll get onto, who was a total baddie bitch, who then got off by her son, because God forbid a woman does anything,